Hello, lovelies. So I'm back to talk about people as elements because I said I was going to do this last week and then the Wi-Fi was really bad. So I'm going to do it now because it's okay. So I want to talk about water and fire because that's what I've been sharing in my emails last week. And I will be sharing more on earth and air. So if you haven't recognized yourself yet in any of those emails, then don't worry because they will be coming. But I'm sure that lots of you out there, right? And I know some people in my soul circle, sorry, I'm faffing with my hair again. I know some people in my soul circle already present as these two elements, water and fire. And I want to talk about the negative aspects of these types and the positive aspects of these types. Now, I want to say that even if you are primarily presenting as water, for example, you'll probably present some of another element as well. It's very unusual for someone just to be predominantly one type. You're usually predominantly two, and there are another two that are kind of hidden or unappreciated, let's say. Right? So for me, I'll take me as an example. I present primarily as water and air, or at least I think I did for most of my life. So I was a very watery, crying child, very super sensitive. I was able to feel people's stuff. I couldn't even handle my own emotions, so it was like completely bubbling out of me a lot of the time. I tended to squash a lot of emotions, and other types can do this too, earth being one of them. But I've got Scorpio moon. Now, it doesn't always relate to star signs, but I do relate it to this case. So I was very, very sensitive, a typical empath, and I think really probably no one really knew how to connect with me on an emotional level, and I was really too young to be able to express what was going on within me. I had no understanding of emotions. So the irony of what I do now is the fact that usually there is a lot of talents and gold in whatever you're presenting when you're a child that a lot of the time gets squashed, and you guys know that I talk about this a lot. So anyway, so primarily water, feeling kinesthetic, intuitive, and all of that juicy stuff. But the negatives of water can be hiding things, burying things away in the deep, and also forgetting about things that you have, talents that you have. We can be very wishy-washy. We can be terrible at manifesting in the 3D. Air types are also a bit rubbish at this, which brings me on to air, which I haven't really gone into yet in the emails, but I'll just mention it here. So I'm also an air type. This my second kind of presenting element is air. Air types love to chat. We love a gab. We love thinking. We love to analyze things. We love having a laugh, like being really silly is kind of air. And what else would be air? I've said too much about air. I'm not talking about air today. But anyway, that's me, right? And I do have more earth when I do my coaching stuff, which I will go into again later. But my fire really only presents itself when there's some kind of injustice. I'm very good at standing up for other people who are going through some kind of injustice. But I wasn't ever really good at standing up for myself if any injustice was happening to me. And that's been a repeating pattern. If anything happened in my life, initially I had no voice to be able to talk about things that were happening to me. Eventually it came in little bits, and now it's much easier, but my fire primarily was really for any injustice in the world happening to other people. I didn't really have it for myself, and I don't really feel comfortable with anger, still not really comfortable with that. I'm more comfortable with it when it presents, like for helping other people. And I use it in my coaching that way. But I'm not really a person who, like, you couldn't say something to me about me that would make me really go crazy. And a fire person is probably the opposite. In fact, I know they're the opposite. Because I know some of them. So a fire person who presents predominantly fire will be a person who is triggered really easily. It's like, they have a soft spot that someone can just say something or do something that's not even really a big thing but it triggers them and they erupt like a volcano. Now, fire people kind of do this thing with their emotions where their emotions, you can, well, as a water person, you can always kind of feel a fire person's emotions bubbling just underneath the surface. Like you always can kind of feel that anger that could be there, that could erupt. And for water people, fire people can be kind of scary, but they can also be kind of intriguing. A lot of water people will end up with fire people, like complete opposites attracting, because water represents something that the fire person needs, and the fire person represents something that the water person needs. So as I talk more about the elements, you'll start to understand that actually we really want to have a full rounded version of the elements. We don't want to leave an element out because then we're not whole, right? Ibrahim says, I suppress my anger, which I need to really stop doing, to be honest, lol. I can be quite explosive as a fire person. Well, exactly, that's what I'm saying. So fire people generally have huge issues with their emotions, similarly to water people, but water people will tend to cry about it, and fire people will tend to rage about it. Now, there's nothing wrong with anger. Okay, let me reword that. It's not that there's nothing wrong with anger. I think the way that we have learned about anger is wrong or slightly misplaced and off track. Anger, I believe, was given to us as a tool for us to learn to set boundaries, because usually when we're very angry, we have emotions going on that we don't understand. So that's one thing. And also, we probably have experienced people who've overstepped our boundaries. And this has helped and aided to make us this way, right? Water people have the same, but they've just chosen a different strategy, right? They've chosen to become probably more victimized. Fire people still feel victimized, but they try and reclaim their power by becoming angry and making themselves feel more powerful in that moment so that they don't feel as victimized. Whereas a water person is more likely just to go and cry and weep and try and reset that way. They're not going to try and reclaim the power somehow. They're not really interested in that. So that's just how they present differently. But fire people, usually they have one dominant emotion, which is anger, and fear is a kind of counterpart to that. They don't really like to feel their sadness. It makes them feel weak. They don't really like to admit when they're wrong. They don't like that at all. They are very rarely able to apologize for something. They will probably eventually, after they've kind of gone into rage, right? So like I said, anger's not really wrong. It's just that rage becomes wrong. You're literally raging your fire all over people, like, you know, burning a whole load of trees down or burning, you know, a city down or something, rather than actually honing it and using it in a way that you can actually speak with power, instead of using it like through your whole body and speaking in pain, because that's really where that's coming from. So fire people are basically the same as water people in the sense of they don't, when they're immature emotionally, right? Not saying that you're all immature, but there is an emotional immaturity within this context, right? Because once you become a really conscious person and you're aware of yourself and you know yourself and you've connected to your inner child, people, I hope you're doing this work. When you've connected to your inner child and you understand how your ego plays out and all of that, then you don't have to use fire as a big raging bull, right? That flies out and starts attacking people. It doesn't have to be that anymore. You don't have to use it as protection. You can use it to be a strong, empowered person within your own self instead of having to lash out at other people. And a water person who becomes empowered realizes that they don't have to become the victim. And what can really help a water person is to understand that they have a responsibility for their part in this apparent victimization, right? So for water people who don't know how to deal with their emotions, it's really important that we get them to realize that they chose whatever situation they're in part. Now, some things are going to happen in life. Like I spoke to a lady this morning who had a stroke, like literally 3 months ago. And it's very easy in that situation to become a victim, right? And bless her, she's, a woman who's a very strong woman and is struggling at the moment. But there's lots of gifts in having that experience that I was trying to explain to her, which hopefully I got through. But anyway, there are situations that are going to happen, but it's really important that we do the work within ourselves so that if any of these situations present themselves, we already know ourselves enough that we know how to rebalance. We don't go into watery victim, and we don't go into angry fire and become kind of really misaligned with soul, right? I'm just going to read some of the things you're saying. Graham, some might use anger as a defense mechanism. Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about, is anger and fear, right? Usually are kind of buddies when it comes to this sort of stuff. I don't know if I've ever met an angry person who's just been angry at me or angry at a situation who doesn't have some kind of fear that is presenting next to it. Like I said, a very conscious fire person will be able to be triggered but have enough earth within them, because this is really grounding. Fire kind of needs water and earth. If you are a fire person who has fire and air presenting, you are literally some oxygen for that fire. You're probably a nightmare when it comes to communication. So fire people really need some water, which we can work with some empathy and compassion, especially to the self. This is why if I'm working with a fire person, I will be predominantly looking at how they speak to themselves. So aside from what's going on within their actual life and the people who's around them, what is their own internal dialogue, right? Because a fire person's ego is very, very quick to chat in their ear. It's super fast. It's like literally like a spark, right? When you just spark like a match off against the box, it just is there presenting. So that's what I would normally look at with a fire person. So you're absolutely right. Fire people do use this as defense, but it's ill-advised and it's not in alignment with soul, because it will literally just turn into a raging fire. And afterwards, there's a whole load of blaming and shaming that goes on within, and that's not helpful either, because this is a fire person's predominant thing, is to either become physically aggressive in that moment and make themselves bigger, or they will use their words as venom. And as soon as it's stopped with whoever they are saying it to, they go back to their room, or they go and, sit in their car, and they go driving in their car, and they've got that same chatter going on in their own head to themselves. So words are very important when it comes to fire people, as in internal dialogue. Abraham, maybe that's why I'm afraid to feel my anger. Lol, yes, I don't like to say sorry and admit my mistake. But then I feel bad and realise what I've done. And even though it kills me to say sorry, I just realise it's best to say sorry. Well, this is the thing. It's there is a need to apologise when we step out of alignment, because one of the things is once you've said something, it's very hard to take that back. And words have power. And I can't express enough how powerful words are, right? It says at the beginning of the Bible, even if you don't believe in the Bible, I think this is a golden nugget, that, God spoke and created the world. So to me, that's a symbolism of us speaking and literally creating our world, creating our manifestation of life, right? Whatever we speak, whatever we believe, even if we're just speaking it indoors and we're not speaking it outside, although speaking aloud is powerful, much more powerful in itself. When we're speaking to ourselves, we are programming ourselves with what is okay for us. I'm always talking about limiting beliefs and ceilings and breaking through that ceiling, breaking through the subconscious, breaking the family conditioning, the patterns that we're taking on, and really looking at ourselves. And one of the ways that I like to do this is with elements, because if we can look at ourselves and say, okay, I present as mostly a fire person, then what is it I need more of in order to communicate more effectively, in order to understand my pain, right? What's really going on? And some of that is the inner child work that I do, but this is like a really quick way of looking at it. Like, if I meet someone who's predominantly fire, like Ibrahim's saying, you know, he manifests as fire, and I would also say air. I'm sorry, love, you have that combination of, you know, flame and oxygen erupting, because when you know, speak to me, you know, it is jolly and happy and having a laugh, and you love to talk, right? Because that's air. And you love to dream and all of that. I know I said I wouldn't talk about air. I'm talking about it anyway. But you present that, right? And so that, you use air as a mask because it feels lighter. So you need that. But you can also hide a lot behind it. And so your fire will present probably with your family, right? I know some of that. But also within yourself, when you're by yourself, when you're on your own. And that's when it gets dangerous, right? Yes, definitely love air. I was saying full of hot air. That's me, because I don't shut up sometimes. Have to be told, calm down, be quiet. So, yeah, so basically the problem with fire is not that fire is a problem itself. It's just that if it's ungrounded and you haven't learned to honor a little water in your world, right? Little water can be crying, right? Because a lot of people don't like crying because they think it's weak. So if you don't honor crying and tears and the strength that that gives you, it is also feeling. Water is all about feeling. If you don't honor feeling the pain in your body, feeling the emotions in your body, right? And really holding that space and really listening to that, right? Water is actually very listening. It's about stillness when it's in its prime, right? When it's in its peak, its higher self. Listening, feeling, intuiting, right? All the intuition that we gain is water, right? It's body presence. It's connected. If we're not doing that with ourselves, then our fire is just going to keep raging away somewhere within us. And this can cause inflammation in the body. This can cause loads of problems with joints, irritable bowel syndrome, constipation, and actually heart problems. Like, a lot of people start feeling like they have panic attacks because they're not being kind. They've been conditioned probably to be quite nasty to themselves, but they probably don't realize it's nasty. They've probably learned it from somewhere, right? As I said, in all of my work, you guys know this, I'm always reiterating that this stuff starts in childhood. We learn this stuff. Some of it, yes, comes through anyway, right? I was talking yesterday about a little boy that I met many years ago, and when I met him, he had a really scary vibe, and he was only 9. And I just remember, and I didn't know all of this stuff then, but I remember at the time just feeling him and thinking, there's something not right there. I can feel it. Like, you are just kind of, I want to say bad, but that sounds terrible because he was just a little boy. But like, I could feel this kind of darkness. And when he got to about 15, he actually was involved in a stabbing. And, you know, and he ended up, you know, going to juvenile detention. And I could already see it a way back years ago, because sometimes there's just something there that needs to be cleared. And, you know, if you don't know about any of this work, which his family didn't, they weren't looking for any of that. And I believe that came from further back down the line in his family, because there'd been a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse in the family. It wasn't happening now, but it was present in him. So it can go a little bit deeper, right? But I'm trying not to make this too deep today. I'm not doing very well. But basically what I'm saying is a really easy way is to look yourself in the mirror and go, what do I present as? Okay, I present as mostly fire. What does that look like? Well, we see what that looks like every day. I'm always shouting at someone, or I'm always being horrible to myself. I'm always angry. And then go deeper with it. Bring a little bit of water in there. Bring some compassion in there. Start to learn to cultivate a soul voice. A soul voice will never speak to you in a horrible, diminishing, derogatory way. It will talk to you with love, right? If you have to imagine someone, if you're doing work with me, some people have used my voice, which I think is hilarious and kind of awesome, but do that. And if you haven't, then you find a voice, find a grandmother who was loving to you, or, connect to some kind of archetype that has an all-knowing, all-giving, nurturing, water-based sense, compassion, empathy, listening, caring, all of that lovely kind of divine feminine stuff, right? So, has that told you enough about fire? I don't know. No, it hasn't, because I haven't mentioned the positives. Fire people's pluses are, they are super action takers when they are using their energy for their betterment, right? If you use fire's energy to keep fighting with people and to keep trying to get away from your pain, you're absolutely wasting all of that amazing natural fire energy, right? So wasted. Fire people are natural manifestors. You don't understand the gift that you have. Fire people are like the 3D manifestors of the world, right? This is what the air people want, right? And the water people, right? Fire is kind of able to create. And I kind of put this down to, man's evolution. At the moment when man created fire, then it was like we suddenly evolved so much quicker, right? Things started to happen so much faster. We started to be able to make tools with metal. We could use the earth, right? And water as part of that as well to make tools. And our creative ideas literally were able to come down from air and be manifest on the planet. Fire people have this quality. You are the manifestors of the 3D world. You are really able, when you get really rooted, because this is what fire is about, red, orange, fire, all the root chakra stuff, body centered. When you get more in touch with your body, and it's less about wasting your fire here, meaning up in your body, in your arms, or coming out of your mouth, in defense or anger, or rage, I should say, then you can actually use that energy to move you forward in life. Fire people, if you were to look at the planet of entrepreneurs, most of the entrepreneurs that present on the planet right now are dominantly fire people, predominantly, right? So as a sort of plus for fire, you have an amazing skill. You can really put fire to good use, but you have to learn about yourselves emotionally, or you might never manifest that thing, manifest that quality. But that's who you are at your core, right? So it's just about building some empathy and absolutely building some more earth. So as I said, I'll be talking more about earth later this week. I will send an email out about earth and about air. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, then please do. I will leave a link below this video. So Alexandra says, good idea. I feel so empty, like giving up. I need a push. I'm not sure what you present as, Alexandra. I have a suspicion it might be air, which I said I'll talk about more next week. So, yeah, water people. Now, water people, as I said, have issue with emotions, in the sense of they are the ones that are super sensitive. Like fire people are actually super sensitive, but they just become defensive when they feel prodded, whereas a water person will be prodded and, oh, my battery's low. Water person will be prodded and will be more likely to go away and cry. And then their internal dialogue will become more of the victim. And why am I in this place? No one understands me. No one cares about me, and all of that jazz, right? And so with a water person, we need to look at inner dialogue, but it's really about learning for, water people are typical empaths. This is what an empath would usually be presented as in the world. Someone who is so overwhelmed emotionally that they can't even go outside, that they struggle when they get on a train or a plane, that they are afraid of the world. And some of that is true for a lot of us empaths at the beginning, but an empowered empath is not like that, right? I've gone through this journey. So I've lived through a time when I was like, I need to get out of the city. I just want to live in the country. I can't be around people, which is hilarious because now I need to work with people. This is what my mission is. So I had to learn to become an empowered empath, right? Which is somebody who actually is able to be in the body and can feel other people's stuff and can feel my own stuff, but I don't feel the need to run out of my body. Now, this happens a lot for water people when they feel kind of overwhelmed. It is literally like their cup is running over. You kind of feel like you're coming out of your body, that you're not really, you're kind of in it and you're feeling it, but it's too much, basically. And so you can't communicate effectively. And a lot of water people will try and stuff it back in. Now, we know with water, that doesn't really happen, right? You can't stuff water back in. It's going to leak out everywhere. And I have to say, many times in my life, when something has been going on emotionally for me and I've been squashing it, leaks would happen in my house. The bath would leak. The pipes under the floor would leak. The washing machine would break down. The tap would go bust, right? I need to get new things to fix it, right? That would happen loads. And I know that might sound weird, but I'm always talking about whatever is within presents without. That's what would happen to me. I have a friend of mine whose electrical equipment would always go weird. She's quite earth. So I think earth and metal and electricity, that's all kind of the one thing. So that's what would happen for me with water. So I had to learn to really be in more balance with my water. Now, I learned it through a lot of hardship, and I don't believe it has to be that way. But unfortunately, it was that way because I didn't have anyone else to teach me. I didn't have me teaching me. I had to learn as I went along. So this is why I'm trying to share some of this with you today, so you can start to recognize yourself, and then you can start to work on the aspects of you that need to be integrated, right? So for me, I really had to learn to be, to pull my air down, all the channeling information, to actually accept that and honor that. That's for one. But I also had to learn to be in an environment, and I'd moved to London at the time when this was kind of happening at its peak. And I was really struggling. For the first year in London, I hated it. I in the sense of I couldn't feel like I had any space for just me, because you think there's so many people there, there's so much Wi-Fi there, so much stuff, that I was feeling everything. I hated getting on the tube. I hated being in the busyness. It was like my ears would become so heightened. I could hear people over across the room and I couldn't focus on who was speaking to me, here. Some of that is an air issue, actually. It's not just water. But it was like everything was just heightened and crazy. And so had to learn to become more earth. Now, some of that, like I said, was through this turbulence, but a lot of it was actually through recognizing that my intuition was on point. So I started to get lots of messages, not really for myself, but for other people. And the more I committed to honoring it, the more I knew that it was correct, I could feel myself more in my body. It was almost like I wasn't as afraid to feel, because I knew that it was a knowing. It wasn't like, even things that really didn't make sense. Like my ex, I was with him at the time, and I remember saying to him that he was in trouble, but he was going to be ripped off by this guy that he was working with. Now, I hadn't met the guy, never met him. I'd seen him once in a video. I think it was like a Skype call or something. And I just knew this thing was going to happen. I said, there's something about money. It's not a good thing. There's something going to happen with him around money. You have to set things in place. And he didn't listen to me, but I had tuned in so much to myself that I knew this was a knowing, and it was really loud. And so I had to speak it, right? Which I'll get onto in a minute if my battery stays on. So I had to speak it. So there's another bit about speaking your truth. Water people really have to learn to speak their truth, because water people can be afraid of speaking, right? Fire people generally just let anything fly out of their mouth. But water people, like I said, they hide. It's kind of like the mermaids or the mermen. They would rather kind of go down to the deep and just not bother speaking into air. And so I had to learn to speak my truth. And when I learned to do that, that was another way that I really embodied it, because now it was like this feeling, this knowing had to come out. So I had to speak the truth. And he didn't listen to me, but that's up to him. It was more about me honoring my feeling. And it happened within like the space of like a month or two. This guy had run off with like over £100,000 that they put into this business that they were doing. So more and more things happened like that. And the more I owned it, 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 then I started to feel more earth, more grounded, more in my body. And I was able to channel more effectively. Like doing this live stream for me now, I can literally pull down whatever is coming through here, and I can feel it in my body, and I can pull it back up and speak to you. I couldn't do that back in the beginning. That wasn't me. I wasn't able to communicate this quickly. I wasn't able to hear the guidance and then just let it come out of my mouth. That was really difficult. So for any of you who are struggling with that, it won't always be like that if you do this inner work, right? Alexandra says, I feel I can relate to water also. Yes, I feel something I could speak assertive. I think it's maybe I feel dead alone. I feel water is major development. For me, my Cancerian is water sign too. Cancer as a sun sign is about you becoming more nurturing and caring, and the sort of archetypal mother. It is not about you just being a water person and feeling all the emotions and being an emotional nightmare for yourself and for other people, because Cancerians can be like that. But that's not an empowered version of you. So I know you go through a lot of internal hurt. You kind of berate yourself a lot and wonder why you are a certain way. That can be very water. But you have to let that go. And that's the thing, is you have to start to trust yourself. And water people and air people and fire people, all those three tend to have some kind of distrust with self. Earth people kind of tend to distrust everyone else but themselves, which is really funny. Earth is kind of, which I'll just tap into a little bit, is sort of, yes it is, or no it isn't. It's very black and white. So Earth people are the kind of lucky ones in a way, who very rarely think they're wrong. They just always think they're right. There's not so much doubt with them, but there are other negatives with them, I have to say. Earth people are very, very hard to get to see their stuff. My battery is totally running low, so I think I'm going to have to go. So anyway, I hope that explains more to you about fire and earth. And if you would like more information on this, please message as much as you want in the comments below, and I will do my best to share with you. I might actually create a little document about this so that you have it. Yeah, I will. I'll create a little document about it. But yeah, just share with me anything that you've realized about yourself. Ask me any questions on the other types as well, and I will share more with you as soon as I can. All right, I'll be traveling to London, guys, on Thursday. So I would love to meet up with some of you over the bank holiday weekend. I might be there until next. I'm not really sure yet. It depends how long my friend will let me stay at his place. But yeah, I will try and organize something so we can all meet up. All right, I shall see you soon. Bye.